This 4-2-3-1 formation is one of the positions Arsenal can adopt, but when in possession, they can also create a square in midfield. One way to do this is, for example, by bringing Calafiori into the middle and lining up a line of 3 with the other defenders. With Calafiori's entry, Rice can move up a bit more, Ease opens up on the right, and the 2 wingers stay wide. Of course, we also have the possibility of Calafiori and Rice switching positions, but the main point here is the formation of this square in midfield. However, this isn't the only way to do it, because Slots Liverpool can also adopt this formation, but in a different way. This is Liverpool's 4-2-3-1, and instead of pulling the fullback inside, he can simply bring the striker to play more or less in line with the attacking midfielder, as if it were a duo, and then he would leave the 2 wingers wide open. Here, he would form a different square, with the 2 holding midfielders together with the attacking midfielder and the striker. It would be a distinct way of creating the square, because he would keep 4 players at the base of the play, without a reference point further forward. A similar formation to the one Arsenal uses is the one Manchester City employed in their Champions League winning season. They would start with a 4-3-3, with the right-sided centre-back, Stones, dropping slightly towards the halfway line, pulling Rodri a bit further to the left and leaving the other 3 defenders forming a back 3. Once again, this would create a square formation in midfield. But this isn't doing it for the sake of doing it, there's a logic to it, which is creating advantages. The most obvious advantage that the square formation can create is this. If we look at one of the most used defensive positioning systems, which is the 4-4-2, we see that in the middle there's a pair of holding midfielders. When we place a square in that area, we create a 4-against-2 situation in one of the most crucial places on the field. This logic still applies against a 4-3-3, since we would have a 4-against-3 situation. However, it would be reductionist to only talk about numerical advantage. Although it's the most obvious, it can be neutralized if a 4th player from the opponent enters that region, leaving a 4-against-4 situation. Then we would no longer have a numerical advantage, but we could create other advantages from there. The moment the opponent places that player inside the square, they end up opening up another region. Depending on the opponent's behavior, if there is no numerical advantage, we look for other benefits. Basically, there are 2 main ways to use this square formation. One is Manchester City's from the 22-23 seasons, and the other is what Liverpool and Bayern Munich sometimes use, keeping 2 wide players on each side. They favor different types of advantage. In this 3-2-5 system, we greatly favor skillful wingers. Imagine the opponent balances the sector by pulling their wingers to mark our 2 defensive midfielders and leaving their defensive midfielders to mark our 2 attacking midfielders. We would have a 4-against-4 in the middle, but the wings would be open and we would still have a 3-against-2 advantage in the build-up play. The ball could reach one of the wingers, either through a direct pass or worked inside to get there. Because the opposing team brought their wingers inside, they depopulated the flanks, making it difficult to create a double marking on our winger. And, if they tried to double up, they would have to leave one of our midfielders free. Without the double marking, we leave our winger in a one-on-one situation. If he is a skillful player and gains the upper hand in the duel, we create a tactical advantage called a qualitative advantage. But we can also create another type of advantage using the second square formation. Unlike the previous one, we would keep 2 players wider, in this case, the 2 full backs, and continue to have maximum width in the first line with 4 players. If the opposing wingers don't close down the center to balance the 4-against-4 in midfield, our full backs are free to advance almost unopposed. That's why the opponent usually doesn't do this. What would the opponent do in that situation? They could have both wingers marking our full backs, both midfielders pushing up to mark our defensive midfielders, and the 2 most advanced players being marked by the center backs. If the opponent doesn't want to give us a numerical advantage in midfield, they end up forcing the center-backs to push up a bit more, which opens up space for an infiltration. This can be exploited in several ways, such as a long ball from the center-back to the winger. Here, we would create a kinetic advantage, or dynamic advantage. The winger starts accelerating before the fullback and attacks the empty space left by the center-backs who have moved up to mark. Of course, the team won't force long balls all the time. They can circulate the ball inside and, in a short play, attack the space with the winger, the midfielder, or the center forward himself. In short, in a very direct way, one of these square formations values the qualitative advantage, focused on the skillful player breaking through the defense in a one-on-one situation, while the other values the kinetic advantage, taking advantage of the space behind the defense.